It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. October 27th, 2021, the day 52-year-old Dawn Walker finally found love again. Surrounded by her daughters, her friends, her new husband, she smiled for photos inside a quiet registry office in Halifax. But behind that smile, something felt off. Her hands shook. Her eyes wandered. More than one guest whispered that Dawn didn't look like a woman getting married. She looked like someone saying goodbye. Hours later, CCTV would capture her for the last time, walking toward her front door at 10:36 p.m. The next morning, she was gone. And the man who vowed to love her became her killer. This is not just another wedding night tragedy. It's a chilling reminder that some vows end in silence. Stay with me and tell me when love turns to fear. Would you see the signs? October 27th, 2021, a day that was supposed to be filled with laughter, champagne, and promises of forever. For 52-year-old Dawn Walker, it was the day she had waited for her entire life. A mother of three, a grandmother of three, she had finally found love again after years of heartbreak and loneliness. That morning, she woke up early, her heart racing. The dress she had chosen hung neatly by the window, white and soft under the Halifax morning light. So everything was perfect. The registry office booked, the flowers arranged, the family waiting with teary smiles. To everyone else, it looked like a happy ending. But Dawn knew better. Her hands trembled as she fixed her hair, her eyes restless, scanning the mirror as if searching for an answer only she could hear. Later, at the Prince Albert pub, surrounded by music and laughter, people noticed something strange. She wasn't glowing with joy like most brides do. She looked distant, distracted, her smile tight as if forced through fear. When friends raised their glasses to toast the newlyweds, Dawn's eyes darted toward Thomas, her new husband, and for a moment, just a split second, her expression changed. It was fear. It was fleeting, but it was real. Some would later say she looked like a woman trying to believe in her own happiness. Others said she looked like someone silently saying goodbye. As night fell, the celebration began to fade. The guests danced, the laughter dimmed, and by 10:30 p.m. the newlyweds called a taxi home. The driver remembered how quiet they were. No conversation, no laughter, no hand-holding. Just silence. A strange, heavy silence that clung to the air inside the car. At 10:36 p.m., CCTV captured Dawn for the last time, stepping out of that taxi, walking toward her front door on Shirley Grove. The camera blinked once, twice, and then she vanished from the frame. That was the last time anyone ever saw her alive. What happened next would shock an entire community and expose years of secrets, manipulation, and missed warnings. A story not just about love, but about control, silence, and the danger of second chances. Because sometimes, the people we trust most are the ones we should fear the most. This is the story of a wedding that ended in blood, a love that turned into a cage, and a woman who sensed her fate long before it found her. Stay until the end. You'll need to see how every smile that day was hiding something far darker than anyone could imagine. Everyone in Lightcliff knew who Dawn Walker was. You didn't need to know her personally. If you lived on Shirley Grove, chances are she'd already waved to you from across the street, or shown up at your door with a plate of homemade food just to say hi. She was that kind of person. The kind who noticed when someone looked tired, who'd drop a few pounds into your hand and say, "Don't worry about it," even when she barely had enough herself. Once she paid for a disabled man's groceries when his card declined. Another time she organized a summer barbecue, just so her new neighbors wouldn't feel alone. Dawn didn't just live in a community, she built one around her kindness. Her 3 daughters called her their sunlight, and her grandkids adored her. She remembered every birthday, every small detail that made people feel seen. To her friends, she was unstoppable energy, always busy, always caring. But behind that warm, infectious laugh, there was another side no one liked to talk about. Dawn had been struggling for years with bipolar disorder and depression. There were good days when she'd sing along to the radio while selling Avon and Tupperware around town, and there were bad days when she couldn't get out of bed, her smile gone, replaced by silence. Those who truly knew her said she hid her pain behind kindness, as if helping others could quiet the storm inside her. Maybe that's why people trusted her so deeply. Maybe that's why when she said she was happy again, that she'd finally found love, no one questioned it. Because how could something so bright ever go dark? Yet looking back, Every act of kindness, every laugh, every cheerful text now feels different, like pieces of a life that was desperately trying to hold itself together. Dawn gave everything she had to others, her time, her love, her empathy, but in the end, she gave it to the wrong person, and that mistake would cost her everything. Before we go deeper, take a moment to remember her not as a victim, but as the woman she truly was, and kind, giving, and endlessly hopeful. Because to understand the darkness that came next, we first have to see just how much light she brought into the world. Stay with me. When Dawn first met Thomas Nutt in late 2018, he seemed like everything she had ever wanted. Charming, polite, attentive. He listened when she spoke, he laughed at her jokes, he opened doors and made her feel seen again after years of loneliness. To her friends, he looked like a second chance. To Dawn, he felt like safety. But safety was the last thing Thomas Nutt could ever offer. Behind that calm smile was a man with a past soaked in violence, one he'd spent decades hiding beneath his gentle tone and practiced charm. At 17, he was already convicted of grievous bodily harm. In his 20s, he spent years behind bars for robberies and assaults. In his 30s, he deliberately rammed a woman's car in a fit of road rage. And between 2005 and 2015, he terrorized his former partner, Kimberly Alcock, a woman who would later describe him as a monster hiding behind a polite mask. Kimberly said he could be loving one moment and a nightmare the next. He'd switch in an instant, eyes wide, voice low, like something inside him broke loose. She said, when he lost his temper, nothing could stop him. He became someone else. After a decade of fear, she finally escaped, but not without scars, both the kind you can see and the kind you can't. When Dawn met Thomas, people who knew his past tried to warn her. Be careful, they said. He's not what he seems. But Dawn, ever kind, ever hopeful, believed what so many victims before her believed, that love could fix what life had broken. She told friends, everyone deserves a second chance. Maybe she thought she could heal him. Maybe she thought her kindness would change him. But Thomas didn't want to be healed. He wanted control. And slowly, quietly, he began to take it. One decision, one boundary, one piece of her independence at a time. He wasn't loud about it. He didn't have to be. That's the thing about predators. They don't chase, they wait. By the time Dawn realized what she was trapped in, it was already too late. The smile that had once made her feel safe would become the last thing she saw. Before we move forward, remember this moment, the illusion of love, the mask before the monster. Because from here on, every warning she ignored would echo louder, until it became the scream no one heard in time. Stay with me. This is where the darkness begins. At first, it was small things. Thomas didn't like Dawn's daughters visiting too often. He said he wanted alone time, that he needed her to himself. Then came the rules. No phone calls after a certain hour, no going out without letting him know where she was. He began checking her messages, showing up unannounced when she was selling Avon or talking to neighbors. What seemed like protectiveness turned into control, and what looked like love slowly became surveillance. By 2020, Dawn's laughter had quieted. She stopped attending gatherings, stopped hosting her little barbecues, and the woman who once brightened everyone's day now spoke in whispers. Her daughters noticed bruises she couldn't explain, a black eye hidden behind makeup, a swollen lip brushed off as an accident. But neighbors knew better. They'd seen him yelling at her on the front lawn. They'd heard things through the walls that no one should ever hear, shouting, crashes, silence, and then Dawn's voice trembling, begging him to stop. Several times police were called. Each time she told them what happened. Each time she took it back. He didn't mean it, she'd say. He just lost his temper. It's a cycle too many victims know too well. Violence, apology, forgiveness, repeat. In August 2021, the cycle nearly ended in death. Around 4:30 in the morning, a neighbor named Malcolm heard Dawn screaming, "Don't believe him! He's trying to kill me." Moments later, Thomas appeared at the door, calm, claiming she was having an asthma attack. But the look in her eyes told another story, one of terror and exhaustion. When friends asked why she stayed, Dawn would shrug, "Because I love him, because I'm scared of what happens if I leave." Those who loved her tried to intervene. Her daughter Kira begged her to get out. Even Kimberly, Thomas's ex, reached out privately with a chilling message, "He will kill you one day." Please leave before he does. But Dawn didn't. Maybe she believed he could change. Maybe she hoped that marrying him would calm the storm. That commitment might bring peace. So despite the warnings, despite the bruises, despite the voice in her own head whispering danger, Dawn Walker stood at that altar 2 months later and said, "I do." What she didn't know was that it wasn't a vow. It was a countdown. Every red flag had been raised. Every alarm had sounded. But no one could stop what was coming next. Because love can blind you. And sometimes it kills you. Stay with me. The night of the wedding will change everything. At first, it was small things. Thomas didn't like Dawn's daughters visiting too often. He said he wanted alone time, that he needed her to himself. Then came the rules. No phone calls after a certain hour, no going out without letting him know where she was. He began checking her messages, showing up unannounced when she was selling Avon or talking to neighbors. What seemed like protectiveness turned into control, and what looked like love slowly became surveillance. By 2020, Dawn's laughter had quieted. She stopped attending gatherings, stopped hosting her little barbecues, and the woman who once brightened everyone's day now spoke in whispers. Her daughters noticed bruises she couldn't explain, a black eye hidden behind makeup, a swollen lip brushed off as an accident. But neighbors knew better. They'd seen him yelling at her on the front lawn. They'd heard things through the walls that no one should ever hear. Shouting, crashes, silence, and then Dawn's voice trembling, begging him to stop. Several times police were called. Each time she told them what happened. Each time she took it back. "He didn't mean it," she'd say. "He just lost his temper." It's a cycle too many victims know too well. Violence, apology, forgiveness, repeat. In August 2021, the cycle nearly ended in death. Around 4:30 in the morning, a neighbor named Malcolm heard Dawn screaming, "Don't believe him. He's trying to kill me." Moments later, Thomas appeared at the door, calm, claiming she was having an asthma attack. But the look in her eyes told another story, one of terror and exhaustion. When friends asked why she stayed, Dawn would shrug. "Because I love him. Because I'm scared of what happens if I leave." Those who loved her tried to intervene. Her daughter Kira begged her to get out. Even Kimberly, Thomas's ex, reached out privately with a chilling message. "He will kill you one day. Please leave before he does." But Dawn didn't. Maybe she believed he could change. Maybe she hoped that marrying him would calm the storm. That commitment might bring peace. So despite the warnings, despite the bruises, despite the voice in her own head whispering danger, Dawn Walker stood at that altar 2 months later and said, "I do." What she didn't know was that it wasn't a vow. It was a countdown. Every red flag had been raised. Every alarm had sounded. But no one could stop what was coming next. Because love can blind you, and sometimes it kills you. Stay with me. The night of the wedding will change everything. The wedding looked perfect. The photos show laughter, the clinking of champagne glasses and a bride glowing in white. But if you look closer, really look, you can see it. Her smile is tight. Her eyes don't shine. They flicker. Every frame feels like she's forcing herself to believe this is love, that this is safety. At the Prince Albert pub, friends cheered, music played, and guests toasted to new beginnings. But Dawn's hands wouldn't stop trembling. She kept adjusting her ring, glancing toward Thomas as if waiting for something to go wrong. People noticed. One friend whispered that she looked like a woman walking through fog. Still, no one said anything. By 10:30 p.m., the newlyweds called a taxi home. The driver later told police the ride was silent. No conversation, no laughter, not even a glance between them. Just two figures sitting side by side, staring out opposite windows, their faces half lit by passing streetlights. At 10:36 p.m., CCTV captured them arriving at their house on Shirley Grove. Dawn stepped out first, the hem of her white dress brushing against the curb. She turned briefly toward the camera, a blink, a ghost of a smile, then vanished into the darkness. That was the last image the world would ever have of her. Minutes later, the house went quiet. Too quiet. Neighbors heard the faint thud of something heavy, the creak of floorboards, and then nothing. No shouting, no cries for help, no struggle. Just silence thick enough to make the air feel wrong. One neighbor later said, "It sounded like the kind of silence you feel in your chest." Somewhere behind those walls, Dawn Walker was fighting for her life. But no one knew. And even if they had, it was already too late. The woman who had spent her whole life caring for others was now at the mercy of the man she trusted most. By midnight, the lights were off. The street was still. To the outside world, it was just another quiet night in Halifax. But inside 33 Shirley Grove, a wedding had turned into a crime scene. Hours earlier, Dawn had walked down the aisle. Now she would never walk again. The photos from that day would soon be evidence. The laughter turned into echoes. What happened behind that closed door would haunt everyone who loved her, because no one saw it coming, even though the signs had always been there. This was the night love ended, and silence began. Stay with me, because the horror of what Thomas did next defies imagination. What Thomas Nutt did after killing his wife was as cold as the murder itself. In the early hours of October 28th, just hours after the wedding, he hid Dawn's body inside a kitchen cupboard. He didn't call for help. He didn't panic. Instead, he began cleaning, methodically, quietly, like a man wiping away a stain he didn't want anyone to see. Then he picked up Dawn's phone and started sending messages to her daughter. "I'm fine," they read. "Just need some space." But they didn't sound like Dawn. The words were wrong, too clipped, too calm. Still, Thomas kept up the illusion. To the world, he was the loving husband whose new wife had suddenly gone missing. He hung laundry in the garden the next day, the same clothes he'd worn on the night of her death, freshly washed. At 5:10 p.m., CCTV caught him calmly pinning shirts on the line, as if nothing had happened. Then he did something no one could believe. He packed up their caravan and drove off alone to the seaside. He told neighbors Dawn wanted a little honeymoon time apart. In truth, her body was still locked in that cupboard, cold and hidden beneath the house they were supposed to share. Days passed. October 31st, Halloween. Thomas returned home, and in a grotesque parody of normalcy, began decorating the house with fake cobwebs and caution tape. He hung skeletons on the walls while his wife's corpse was still there, just a few feet away. Then, pretending to be worried, he called Dawn's daughter, urging her to come help look for Mom. He even took her and her young son into the very kitchen where Dawn's body lay concealed. Later, Kira would recall the horror of realizing she had fed her child in the same spot where her mother had been murdered. By afternoon, pressure from police was building. Officers wanted to search the house, and Thomas knew he was out of time. So at 4:38 p.m., CCTV captured him dragging a large suitcase through the backyard, Dawn's body inside. Minutes later, officers arrived at the door. He greeted them calmly, pretending to be the worried husband. But the truth was already unraveling. When her body was discovered dumped in nearby bushes, Thomas still tried to lie, claiming they'd argued, that he'd lost control. But his lies fell apart fast. The CCTV, the fake text messages, the washed clothes, every detail screamed premeditation. The jury saw through him in hours. Guilty of murder, life in prison, minimum term, 21 years. But for many it didn't feel like justice. Not for the woman whose kindness was used against her, not for the family who lived that nightmare. Thomas had planned every moment after the murder, but the one thing he couldn't control was the truth. And the truth exposed him for what he really was. Not a grieving husband, not a man who snapped, but a predator who thought he could rewrite reality itself. Stay with me, because the aftermath of his arrest revealed just how many chances the world had to stop him, and didn't. When the truth finally came out, the world around Dawn Walker fell apart. Her daughters couldn't comprehend it. How the man their mother had married, the man who smiled in wedding photos just hours before, had turned into her killer. The youngest, Kira, told the court in tears, "When I was in Mum's kitchen feeding my son, she was already dead, just 2 meters away, hidden in the cupboard." That single sentence shattered the courtroom. It wasn't just grief. It was the kind of horror that never leaves you. In Lightcliff, neighbors gathered outside 33 Shirley Grove with flowers and candles. They started a community fundraiser, raising over $5,000 for Dawn's funeral, a sign of how deeply loved she had been. The woman who once threw barbecues to bring people together was now mourned by an entire town. And as the trial unfolded, outrage grew. The court heard years of ignored warnings, police reports withdrawn, bruises dismissed, neighbors unheard. The judge didn't mince words. This was a preventable tragedy. The system failed her. But perhaps the most haunting words came from Kimberly Olcock, the ex-partner who had escaped Thomas Nutt years earlier. Standing outside court, she said softly, "He did to Dawn what he always said he would. I survived. She didn't. He's a predator, and the system let him keep hunting." Those words cut through every headline, every statistic, every excuse. Dawn's death wasn't just one man's cruelty. It was the cost of silence, the price of disbelief. Her family says they still hear her laugh in old voicemails, still expect her calls on birthdays. But now, every ring is a reminder of the voice they'll never hear again. Today, her story has become more than tragedy. It's a warning. Behind every quiet bruise, every "I'm fine," could be a Dawn Walker waiting for help that never comes. If you or someone you know is trapped in an abusive relationship, please reach out. Call the National Domestic Violence Helpline or speak to someone you trust. Don't wait. Don't let another name become a headline. Dawn's light was taken far too soon, but her story can still save lives if we listen. Because real love never hurts, and silence kills. Remember Dawn Walker, not for how she died, but for how she lived. A mother of 3, a loving grandmother, a woman who gave even when she had little herself. She was the kind of person who paid for a stranger's groceries, who remembered every birthday, who believed in kindness even when the world wasn't kind to her. That's what we should hold on to. Dawn's warmth, her generosity, her unshakable faith in love. The night she died took her life, but not her legacy. Her neighbors in Lightcliff still speak her name, still place fresh flowers outside her old home. They say that when the wind passes through the street, it feels like she's still there, smiling, waving, spreading the same quiet joy she always did. We tell Dawn's story not to dwell on tragedy, but to awaken empathy, to remind the world how easily kindness can be silenced, and how important it is that we never let that happen again. Somewhere right now there might be another Dawn, someone hiding her pain behind a brave face, hoping for help that never comes. If you see the signs, don't stay silent. If you are living through abuse, reach out. Make the call. Because sometimes one call, one voice, one moment of courage can save a life. Don't let a missed call become a final goodbye. Remember Dawn Walker, not for her tragedy, but for her kindness. Because sometimes telling one story isn't about closure. It's about saving the next heart.